taking Jesus' body, Joseph and Nicodemus wrapped it along with spices in strips of linen. At the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden, a new tomb. Since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. Very early, on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, and Salome were on their way to the tomb.
take a moment and once again not only thank the worship team, but all the volunteers who stood and helped last night and the days leading up to it. We'll give them a great big hand. Believe it or not, when the cat's away, the mice will play, but in this case I knew they were working busily here, and I was anxious to hear what was going on with this wonderful egg hunt. And so I texted. I was trying not to be too anxious, kind of like that dad who's wondering if the kids have made it home, past curfew, one of those. And I don't hear, and I don't hear. And so I text at 9, nothing. I text at 9:15, nothing. I'm getting ready to call, and the first text comes in. And it's from Amanda, and she says, "You won't believe this. We've got over 500. And she was right, I didn't believe it. I thought she'd possibly join Donald Trump's crowd counting team. Whoa. I could not let that one go. Okay? I'm just sorry. I couldn't let it go. And then Donovan texts in another 10 minutes later, and he says, "Oh, no, it's somewhere between 900 and 1,200 people." And I'm still not believing it. And then he finally, that's really what I want to see, is show me the pictures. And finally, they text one. And sure enough, past my office, out into the street and beyond, are crowds of people waiting to get in. But the best one, and I have to read it to you, I love this one, because I got so excited, I had to share the good news. I sent it off to the leaders. I sent it off to the new pastor, Pastor John. I said, "You will not believe this, how many are there." I'd already heard that they'd had to go back to the grocery store, not once, not twice, but 3 times or more to get more candy. Who knew there was that much candy in Twin Falls? But an email came back, and it goes this way: "My friend who lives a block away from the church on 9th called me to find out what was going on, because the line extended in front of her house. Her comment: 'Wow, how neat is that? There were kids and parents nonstop. Looks like a huge success to me. I hope they had enough eggs.' To which the other person said, my comment, 'I hope so too, because I don't believe we anticipated so many.'" When you pray for the whole thing to come undone, to come together, it's amazing when God goes to work and makes it happen. I don't know if it's you or me or what's going on, but I got to tell you, I think the Holy Spirit's at work. And I think something really is exciting in the days ahead for this church and this community and beyond. And trust me, no matter where I live or where I minister in the days ahead, you make me proud. And I love you, and I love the Lord. Well, you know what? Believe it or not, whether it's Easter eggs or not, the story of the resurrection is, let's be blunt, is unbelievable. Okay? In fact, it starts this way. Jesus says, this is to Martha, and if you don't know the story of Mary and Martha, and Mary was the cool one, and so on and so forth, but if you read the rest of the story, Martha was a woman of deep, deep faith. And their brother, Mary's and Martha's brother, Lazarus, dies. And Jesus hangs short. He doesn't go to see him right away. Now Mary, because of what her style was, enjoyed, as it were, the party and everybody coming to say, "Oh, we're so sorry, Mary," whatever. But Martha is a woman of deeper faith than a lot of us give her credit to. You see, Martha says, "I'm going to go get that Jesus." And she hears that he's on his way, but he ain't moving fast enough down the path. And so she shows up. And she says, "Jesus, my brother died. If you'd been here, this wouldn't happen." He said, No, don't worry, it's the resurrection. He says this: "I'm the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die." He tells her that. And in that moment, I got to believe she all of a sudden started to get it. Can we read that aloud together? Ready? Go. "I'm the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die." She was the first one to get it. She was the first one to understand as it was beginning to unfold on Jesus' journey. But wait a minute, there's more. We've already had, last week we had the wonderful triumphal entry into Jerusalem. We had the people wondering, who is this guy? It's a big crowd. And I shared with you that just like a play, that it would unfold and that there would be conflict. And we heard about the conflict, and obviously it led to the cross. And it looked like the end. It looked like the bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, 3-2, and no way to regain the game. But wait, it turns out Jesus does go to the cross. He goes into that tomb, and something miraculous happens. The resurrection. And we think about people like Martha, and we think about his disciples, and the truth of the matter is, if you know the story, they all ran. They hid. They were afraid. And they didn't believe. Oh, they kind of believed, the way that you and I kind of believe. And we have good moments of belief and maybe not so good moments. And we have moments that God's going to see us through, and other moments like, dude, why did you ditch me? Does anybody ever feel that way? Anybody got a health condition right now that you'd sure like a little touch? You're all believers. I can't believe it. I'm in the wrong place. Not one of you raises a hand. And I know for a fact, because I've talked and prayed with a bunch of you. And the truth of the matter is, we have moments of doubt. We have moments that we thought we understood the message. We didn't. We thought we understood the text that says 500 or 1,000. But you know what? Until I started seeing photos, until I came this morning and saw literally all the sign-up slips for all the kids that entered in, I went, now I believe it. And I think you and I are oftentimes that way. Turns out, in Luke 24, there's a passage that we're going to spend some time in today. So you may want to go there. If you have a Bible, grab it. New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. That's all the Gospels, but we're going to be in Luke 24. And it turns out, these are my kind of guys. These are disciples. They are disciples and followers of Jesus. We believe that they even followed along for at least 2.5 to 3 years of his ministry. That they heard him say that the resurrection was going to occur. That in fact, he was the resurrection. Yet even after the cross, virtually none of them believed. They still ran and hid. And we open the door here to 2 of them in particular. Now the same day, 2 of them, this is verse 13, were going to a village called Emmaus, which by the way means hot spring, if that gets you excited, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened, and as they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" The story unfolds, and he said, "Dude, didn't you hear what went on in Jerusalem? Where were you? Were you up in Boise? Were you somewhere else when it all happened?" And they began to share their pain, their loss, their discouragement, their fear. And he listened, and you got to read the rest of the story to see what happens. But I thought about this because I think sometimes a lot of us are like Cleopas and the other disciple. These are the unknown guys. They were disciples who were followers of Jesus, but they weren't the original 12. They weren't the big 12. But they were followers nonetheless. And their whole dream and their whole vision and their whole everything had been crushed with the death of Jesus. And though they even heard that the tomb was empty, they did not believe it. And even when you and I see something on social media, if we're smart, we don't always believe it. And so they were stuck with a quandary. And I think it's an important one, and that is, what does the resurrection mean? We have another slide here. It's from a historian, a church historian, very famous by the name of Latourette. He says the primary source, the appeal of Christianity was Jesus, his incarnation, that is the virgin birth, and his physical appearance, his life, his crucifixion, and what? His resurrection. It turns out, in fact, Rodney Stark, who is also a sociologist of Christian church history, he indicates that up until Christianity became the rule of the Roman Empire around 325, it was a sect. It was called the Way, you see in the book of Acts. And it was a group of people. And their driving understanding was not that Jesus was a good teacher, not that Jesus was a miracle worker, not that he was a Rabboni, a rabbi of great wisdom, but that the resurrection occurred. That through the toughest times, the biggest persecution, men, women, and children who said yes to Jesus did so because he defeated death and stood up, left a grave, and appeared to them. It was the resurrection. Yet here we have these disciples, all of them have cut and run. All of them in fear are hiding. Are we next? What's going to happen? Will I break under pressure? Will I be tortured? Will I be in prison? What in the world? I think I'm going to go back and be a fisherman. That's it. Somehow, the belief and the excitement of the moment paled when the reality of the crucifixion was all they were left with. And even when they heard the good news, when the women came back and said, "You won't believe this, the tomb is empty." When even Peter went and ran, and John ran, to see that the tomb was empty. There was a disconnect. I think if we're honest, or if I'm honest, there are moments when I'm like one of the guys on the road to Emmaus. When I get that tough call, when I hear about a person who I knew had stood for Christ, had followed, collapses under the pressure of notoriety. When I see a friend of mine get a harsh medical opinion. When I see a number of things happen, and I go, really? Is that what it's all about? And just like the two disciples on that road, I have my moments. I know the story. I love the story. But I have my moments. Let's take a look. We have another slide here. I call them belief blockers. It turns out there were three in particular, and you'll see them unfold if you read today Luke 24. It turns out, first of all, denial. We are in a culture today that is denying not only Jesus, Christianity, and his resurrection, but we are seeing an increased time of disbelief in the whole efficacy, as we might call it, of the resurrection story. We have a denial. I love this expression that happens in the Psalmist 14 says, "Only a fool says in his heart, there is no God." And the truth of the matter is, we have a lot of people today promoting and communicating a lot of unbelief. So denial is clearly one of the belief blockers. Now you're here today, so you're either here because you're curious, or you're here because you're a believer, and I love having you here no matter what. Because it's a great day. But we have one that's called distraction. And we're a distracted culture today. It turns out there's a term that's used now called fushing. Can you believe this? Fushing. And fushing, and those of you who have a cell phone, anybody here, it's easier to say, does anybody here not have a cell phone? Then I'm talking to all of you. It turns out fushing is a disease that is spreading rapidly, and fushing is this. A psychologist gave it the name, and I do not know why, but she began to start treating young men and young women who basically are at a disconnect from their relationships. In other words, they're the ones, and maybe you've had this problem, and I know I've been accused on an occasion, that you have a meeting, you have a lunch, you have a dinner, whatever, and the next thing you find is that your partner across the table is sitting there texting. Yeah. put my phone away if you put yours. Sure, Grandpa, no problem. 5 minutes into it, she was down there doing the same. Fushing is breaking up relationships, and I would argue that you and I can often be guilty of fushing our relationship with the Lord. We are so distracted by making a living, getting the kids to school, getting good grades, being popular in school, doing all of the stuff that before you know it, it's like the Lord wants to talk to you, and it's like, yeah, right. Yeah, I'll get to you. Anybody ever have that? That when you maybe are even trying to read His Word, the Bible, that it doesn't break through the clutter. You, my friends, may be distracted by fushing, and you don't even know it. The last is discouragement. You see, you and I can be so discouraged, whether it's physical depression, discouraged because of our situation, our financial situation, our relationships, our whatever, that we sometimes miss out on the opportunity to hear the Lord speak to us, to have our belief strengthened. As we went through the middle of some challenges here a number of months ago, I had to be reminded, thankfully, by some board members that you had told us, Pastor Gary, that some of these challenges would occur. You see, I've been so disturbed, as it were, so depressed by what I'd already seen and already projected and already communicated. In fact, I'd already gone through this before in other places. Change is hard, and it's easy to become discouraged. And I know for a fact many of you had moments of discouragement. Yet the Lord was faithful through it all. So these belief breakers or blockers were things that the disciples had to deal with. These guys could not see Jesus. And I know that there are all sorts of comments that are made that Jesus somehow cast whatever. But I have been in circumstances with folks who were so discouraged, so depressed, so down, that they could not even remember that I had visited with them. They literally did not see me, though I spent time with them. It's a phenomenon. And I would argue that these two men were so discouraged by the events, by the cross, by the tomb, that they forgot to turn the page to the resurrection. Now, I don't know what you're dealing with right now, and I don't know if there is a belief blocker in your life, but if those three start to appear, you can at least identify them. So here's the deal. There is a song, it's a hymn called Because He Lives. I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all fear is gone. Do you know that song? We're going to sing it later. But because He lives, there are four things that I can walk away, and I pray that you walk away with today. The first is this: because He lives, my life has value. Because He lives, my life has value. Not all of us can be an astrophysicist, Stephen Hawking. We're all sorts of accolades were laid at his recent funeral for how brilliant he was and all of that. But in the end, he went to his death denying Christ. But he had value, and you have value. You and I may never be an astrophysicist. You and I may never be the top flight CEO of a company. You might not be the best athlete ever. You may not be the best student. Or if you're a senior, you may not be the best, bridge that we play? I don't know what people play. I haven't gone there yet. But the point of it is you're identified as a valued part of humanity. After all, He took the nails for you. He took the spear in the side for you. But see, you're so valuable, He knew about you even before you or your family knew about you. In fact, the psalmist says it this way, I love this. You made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You have value. In fact, you have a unique value if the DNA scientists are correct. Am I right? They literally can identify out of tens of thousands of people, you're my unique DNA. That's how valuable you are. Can you turn to the person next to them and say, you're really valuable? Don't ignore the one on the other side. Tell them now the other side. You're valuable. Let me tell you how valuable you are. In the book of Matthew, Jesus during the... No, let's not get too excited. Matthew 10, Jesus in the middle of, basically he's wrapping up the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 10, he says, I love this. You are worth more. Now it's true, he compared you to a swallow. But it's good to know that you're worth more and that you have value. Because he lives, you have value. Because he lives, all fear is gone. The second thing I learned along the way is because he lives, I am free. He says it and he reads the book of Isaiah as he launches it, and he says, I've come to free the prisoners. And many of us in this room are prisoners of something. Prisoners of a past that we couldn't control as a kid. Prisoners of maybe some behaviors that we should have controlled, but we didn't. That's me. You know, we're a prisoner of stuff. Yet he came to free us of it. We're not bound by our past. We are not bound by who we were and what we did. He came to free us. It is for freedom, Paul says, that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Now, the truth of the matter is because he lives, I am free. But I not only have to believe it, I have to, as it were, behave it. I have someone in my friends and family, and they love going to church. And they love every message, and they love a particular style of message. And yet, they are captive to fear, which is my third item. That they are a captive to anxiety. You see, they haven't fully believed that they're unique, haven't believed that they are free, and they haven't come to believe that they do not need to fear. Their days are spent in anxiety and lists. Their days are filled with literally advanced planning for the next disaster. I kid you not. We go someplace and they start looking for the right doors to exit. They go someplace and they want to make sure that the water and or the food is just right. And in the middle of their fear and of their anxiety, they can't enjoy the moment in Christ. Because he lives, I am not only free, I can be fearless. The Spirit you received, Paul says, does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Would you underline that? I don't know about you, but we right now today are a culture that is driven by anxiety and fear. All of the what ifs, all of the what next, all of the stuff that consumes us and keeps us awake at night. But if I'm to understand anything, it's because he lives, I have been uniquely made. Because he lives, I am free of my past. I am free of all of the things that I did because he took it to the cross. He shed his blood. And he also shed his blood want you to take a moment. I want you to write down next to it, I can be fearless. What one thing would you do this week if you weren't afraid? What one thing would you do this week if you weren't afraid? Now, I see some of you smiling, but I don't see any writing. So it's either a long list, or you're trying to say, how do I make it short? Maybe you have a relationship to repair that you've been afraid to. Maybe you have a neighbor or a coworker or a fellow student whom you've offended that you need to make it right, yet you feared. He made you fearless. The work he did on the cross, the work he did on coming out of that tomb, he is proof that he lives. And you can face tomorrow fearlessly. The fourth thing I found through this, and in fact it's alluded to by these two, is that because he lives, I have a future. Now, true confession moment. I've just gone a couple of years now by the 70 mark. And all the aches and pains of aging are starting to take hold. And it would be easy to think about yesterday. You know, the memories of the past, the way it used to be. And yet I'm now spending time praying about the future. The future that I have and how to use it for Christ. How I can invest the best I can. Certainly can't run as fast. I never could run fast. Can't run as fast. Can't jump as high. Couldn't jump either. You get the picture here. But there were some things I could do very well as a younger guy. I can't do them anymore. And the issue is that you could hang your head and say, it's over. And I'll just sit in this rocker and let time go by. Or I can ask the Lord, what is my future in serving you in the days ahead? One of the folks who helped the hordes of egg hunters is a little long in age. And the physical buffeting of age has taken over. Yet she was able to stand in to the end faithfully. She saw the future of these children who were hearing at every station of the egg hunt. Are you ready for this? They were hearing the good news of Jesus Christ. See, you all thought they just came for an egg hunt. Am I right? And I understand that literally they were, as they were coached, as they got ready to go do the egg hunt, they would hear part of the good news of Jesus Christ. She saw the future through the eyes of these children. She can't run or jump either anymore. But her future is bright. It's not the same as the past, but it's looking forward. I love this passage. It comes up in the book of John, and it goes this way. The Son of Man must be lifted up, so that anyone who believes in him will have eternal life. For this is how God loved the world. He gave his one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. They have, you have, I have a future because he lives. You don't need a text. You don't need a phone call. You need to believe in him. Here's the big idea. It's as simple as that. We have it there? We have a big idea? The next slide. Wait, Gary. Wait a minute. He lives. Can we say that aloud together? Ready, go. He lives. Let's do it one more time with me. He lives. Join me in a word of prayer. Lord, we thank you. We thank you. We thank you. You told your disciples what would happen. You acted upon what happened, and you rose again. We thank you for that. Lord, let us understand our unique nature, our value to you. Let us, because you live, be free. Free of our past, free of our habits, our hang-ups, all of that stuff. Let us be free from fear, Lord, and ultimately let us see the future through your eyes, through your love for each and every one of us. If you heard this message today and you haven't been quite sure about what it all means, it's as simple as this, and yet the journey is far more complex. Paul understood it simply as this: if you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, you will be saved. That's step one. I invite you, Lord, I invite you people to take part and spend some time with the staff member about the next step. So Lord, we bring this all before you today as we get ready to sing our closing song. We thank you, we thank you, we thank you. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.